I think it's an important distinction to make, though.
I didn't even know about the Occupy Wall Street until I stumbled on your program, but I just wanted to put something out there that the right to keep and bear arms was initiated to prevent things like what happened in Oakland.
Actually not.
Well, no, it's against it's against so people can defend themselves when government gets out of hand.
Actually not. The second, I encourage you to go back and read the history of the Second Amendment. Read the debates in the Congressional Congress, in 1786, 1786 and it was 1786, the summer of 1786. Read the debates about it. The Constitution of the state of Pennsylvania, read that, and this is pretty much verbatim. I'm doing this from memory, but it's pretty much verbatim. Standing armies being the enemy of peace and stability in a republic, every man 17 to 47 years old shall be a member of a local militia. And in order to promote a well-regulated militia, the right of citizens to bear arms shall not be abridged. And that's how it was in the Pennsylvania Constitution. That's how Thomas Jefferson proposed it to the National Convention. And among others, there were many who were saying that. And, in fact, Jefferson was so opposed to there being standing armies during times of peace. There was this large contingent of founders who believed that if we had an army when we weren't at war, the army would develop into a military-industrial complex. The army would represent a threat to a civilian government. They had seen throughout the history of Europe in the 16th, 15th, 14th, 13th centuries over and over and over again where the military had, Napoleon, just the whole long list, where basically military groups, standing armies in countries that were not at war, became the ones who overthrew the civilian government and took over the country. And, in fact, when Thomas Jefferson came into office in 1800, there were over 300,000 men in our army at that time. And he reduced that down to fewer than 6,000 by the time he left in 1808. He tried to kill off the standing army. So that's and they ended up with this huge debate in the Constitutional Convention about whether or not there should be a standing army, and they couldn't resolve it because they couldn't get enough votes to say, let's, in the Constitution, ban standing armies. And so the Second Amendment is half of the language, which is why it starts out by saying, in order to maintain a well-regulated militia, the right of citizens to bear arms shall not be abridged. And that was what the debate was about. It was none of those people. I mean, you will not find any of them. None of those people envisioned a time in the future where American citizens would take up arms against their own government. In fact, they were horrified by the thought. Had that been their motive, the Second Amendment would say you have the right to a cannon, you have the right to a warship, you have the right to anything necessary to take down a government. And the Second Amendment very much does not say that.
Right.
So,
Okay, well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just think, it's terrible. I see this. It's just, I was wondering also, could you maybe throw up an address where a guy could send a check to the young man who got hit with a tear gas canister? Yeah,
it's IVAW, Iraq Veterans Against the War, IVAW.org. And there, you go to their website and you click the donate page, and then they've got special cases, and you click, and it's on the screen right now. Help Scott Olson, IVAW.org.
Okay.
Cliff, thanks a lot for the call. And it just, the founders really did not put the Second Amendment in there so we could overthrow a government. And thank God. Because if everybody in Oakland had been going in, with weapons, you wouldn't have one guy in the hospital, and what would come out of it wouldn't be a democracy. This is my concern about Libya, is that typically when countries experience civil war, violent conflict, as opposed to nonviolent. Nonviolent was Egypt, for example, relatively nonviolent. But when they experience civil war, they typically don't come out of it as democracies. They come out of it as autocracies. And that ain't a good thing.